on Jason Burma, so always contributing to the program, and he does what he does, and we'll let you know all about him towards the end of it. First of all, you can hear me okay there, brother?
Of course I can.
All right, man. First of all, how you been? Haven't talked to you in a while. Hint, hint.
Yeah, Jason. Come on, Jason.
My bad, fellas. I've been good. I'm looking forward to today's broadcast.
You got it, man. I was looking at all the things you want to talk about, and I'm glad you know about them because I've briefly heard of some of the things that you sent me in this message. But I know you sent me a document on Twitter, and when I looked at it, was like, oh, man, this looks like a data dump of something very, very important. Now, you've labeled it as the National Counterintelligence document. Pick it up from there. Tell me what it is and why it's important.
So this is the new counterintelligence strategy for 2020 to 2022. And we now have an open, unclassified document that states, and makes stuff up, I mean, that hacktivists and now leakers are referred to as leaktivists, and public disclosure organizations are now the new Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, ISIS, Cuba, Iran, and North Korea. And I wish I was kidding about that. But that is the move to quelch free speech not only in this country, but throughout the world by labeling it terrorism and cyber terrorism. And now, if you're a whistleblower and you've leaked documents, you can be called a leaktivist, and once again, you're on par with ISIS. And the very scary thing about this is all those MAGA heads out there that think Donald Trump is taking down the deep state. Not only did he sign off on this document, but let me show you what propaganda Mr. Trump is pushing. He's pushing that Russia remains a significant intelligence threat to the United States' interests, employing aggressive acts to instigate and exacerbate tensions and instability in the United States, including interfering with the security of our elections. Mr. President, how many times did you tell us that Russiagate was a hoax, and yet you're propagating the same nonsense in this document?
Yeah, it makes no sense because, that's exactly what he said, and he was right. It was never proven to be anything other than a phone call where a president was exercising his power, playing a little hardball, and then negotiations. Perfectly legal. Maybe not totally ethical, but we're talking world politics here. Yeah. We're not talking a bunch of...
The rules are different.
Yeah. So now he's flipped. Jason, is it just because the Americans need a boogeyman?
Well, it's because that the permanent state's not going anywhere.
Not us. It's the deep state. To blame it on. Is that? I guess that's my question.
My point is this. They have all the rhetoric in the world. This president came in and he said, what? We're going to get out of the Middle East. We're going to get out of Syria. He suggested that Saudi Arabia was involved in 9/11. And yet at every single turn, he continues this track trace database apparatus where all of us are members of a slave state, that if we speak out against it or leak documents exposing it, we can now be labeled terrorists. It's extremely dangerous. It goes beyond party lines, and this is just about as far as our intelligence network has publicly taken it.
Well, I remember, and another thing is he's, and so have the Dems. They just renewed the NDAA, the National Detention Authorization Act, which essentially almost gets rid of your legal rights, and which means you can be detained, kind of like we were talking about earlier, just Chinese people just disappearing, Mick.
Right.
And it's legal for our government to arrest us without any Fourth Amendment rights, show me the proof, that kind of a thing, and detain you as long as they want to. And who comes to mind? Julian Assange. Yeah, I know you want to talk. I know you want to talk about that, but I remember, obviously 9/11, and then you have the whole giant organization that grows up around it. The new,
who determines who gets on this list?
Exactly.
Which government?
That's a hell of a question. Why don't, hey, Jason? Yeah.
Well, since it's so broad in the document, guys, just to let everybody know. We're now just talking about, we're not talking about imminent threats anymore. We're not talking about constitutionality anymore. We're talking about U.S. public and private interests, which is, again, very, very, very hard to define. And you can move that goalpost to wherever you want. And we all should be afraid because the extradition hearing for Julian Assange is coming up now in less than 2 weeks. This is a president that, again, ran on, love the WikiLeaks. Have you seen the WikiLeaks? Can't get enough of the WikiLeaks. And then as soon as he's in, his administration rolls out a 14-part indictment. Okay, they jailed Chelsea Manning after Manning's sentence was commuted, and they fully intend to extradite Assange here for a show trial and criminalize journalism. An organization that has never once posted a fake document. Yet, when you go to the Mueller report, okay, and they mention WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, how do they mention them? Well, they mention how he tried to spread conspiracy theories that Seth Rich was the leaker and that it wasn't Russia. They spend about 2 pages on this. They have their investigative techniques redacted. Why is this important? Well, first of all, the media never talked about it whatsoever. And now, through Freedom of Information Act requests, we have confirmed what we already knew from Seymour Hersh's phone call. The FBI does have files on Seth Rich, did do an investigation, and now through Judicial Watch, we know that investigation was requested by who? Peter Strzok, while he was working with Lisa Page, the 2 people that were trying to take Trump down. These emails are heavily redacted. And it comes as no surprise to me because we also have several civil cases with the Rich family versus various parties. And right now, Aaron Rich, who is suing, the brother of Seth Rich, who is suing Matt Couch and others, has requested the deposition of Julian Assange on this matter, as well as Matt Couch. So you have the person suing wanting it, and you have the person being sued wanting Assange's deposition on this. Guess what? The judge said no.
Oh, so he wouldn't even be allowed to testify.
Not even, listen, again, both parties want it in a civil case. When have you ever seen both parties agree to something like that where someone has key information on these emails, but the judge won't allow it? I'll tell you when the fix is in.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. Just a quick back history, because sometimes you get a guest like Jason on, he knows. Yeah. If you don't know who Seth Rich is, we'll back you up. This goes back to, of course, the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Donna Brazil, running the DNC and literally rigging it for Hillary Clinton. I mean, that's what those documents were that were dumped. That's what WikiLeaks released. And it was, of course, it was a Russian hack, and this is where Russiagate came from. No. Here's what happened. Seth Rich, very patriotic young man, really liked his political party. He was very involved. There's a picture of him literally wearing a jacket and pants that are the American flag. He's very involved, loved his government, and wanted to be part of something good, something positive change. He started to see what was happening. The DNC was screwing Bernie over. So, and this is what most people who pay attention know, he downloaded that information on a little stick. Because downloads happen very fast because, you know, if you're hacking, it's a much slower process of media transfer. So there is a record showing how quickly this stuff was downloaded. So the rumor is, well, he was very upset. He went to WikiLeaks. He gave him the documents. And not too much longer in Washington, D.C., he was walking home late one night, early in the morning, and he, quote, unquote, was a victim of a robbery where they didn't take his phone, they didn't take his gold, they didn't take his wallet. They just shot him in the back twice. Yeah. Now, you said, Jason, just a couple of minutes ago that that he was investigated. How do you know that? Is that in the document you're talking about? Or are you just talking about WikiLeaks and how Assange kind of hinted it was Rich, but he didn't want to? Of course, if you publish ideas and then you quote unquote say who your source is, you're going to run out of sources in a hurry. People want to stay, completely from being known. That's the whole idea of being a news source and protecting your sources. Sure. So he'd never said, and this will kind of wrap it up for you. Assange never said Seth Rich was how we got it, but he did offer a $20,000 reward for Seth Rich's killer.
That is absolutely correct. And actually, that is what is referenced, as you can see, the U.S. $20K reward. And they say that's how Assange was promoting this conspiracy theory. But again, if you look at all these investigative techniques that are blacked out during the WikiLeaks Seth Rich portion of the Mueller report, it's very apparent that they're lying. And now the lawyers for some of these lawsuits had requested all documents the FBI had on Seth Rich. They said they didn't have any documents. They clearly lied now that we have documents pertaining to Seth Rich. Now they've moved the goalpost. They said that they don't have any documents on Seth Rich according to an investigation into his murder. Clearly that is not the case from these emails. Again, if you listen to that leaked Seymour Hersh phone call, all this information goes back to the fact that the FBI did investigate, they did get the forensics unit into his computer, and they did find those emails as well as a method to get them to WikiLeaks via a encrypted Dropbox.
Yeah, that's like you mark the box, and that's was the way it all worked out that way. But who was it you just brought up? Not Seth Rich, the other name you just brought up.
Peter Strzok or Seymour Hersh?
Seymour Hersh. I heard that audio, and it was probably almost 10, 12 minutes long, where he was talking out loud to someone on the phone, did not know he was being recorded, and said, yeah, I'm absolutely convinced that Seth Rich was the leak of the DNC emails, the Podesta emails, the Clinton things. But later on, it surfaced, as Jason just said, someone actually recorded him and published it. Then he distanced himself from what he said on that phone call.
100%.
He said, didn't he just say, I have no comment? Didn't he just back away?
Yeah.
What did he say?
I believe his quote was, I'm not gonna comment on that. Are you crazy? And he never did. And he has had to comment in court, Ledge, in some of these civil suits. However, in court, people like Chris Cuomo will jump on the fact that he said that, Ed Butowski, who is alleged to have recorded this phone call, he's said that, Ed took this information and 2 and 2 made 43 or something like that. You know what I mean? Basically, he's saying that, Butowski jumped the gun on his theories, but you can clearly hear what Hersh is talking about, and you can divide up what is a theory and what is fact. And the fact is, Hersh had his FBI source go in there, look at the documentation on Seth Rich. According to, again, some of these court cases, that source was Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. How that is not headlines is absolutely amazing. But just about everything I've talked about on this program is something that you won't see on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, or any other mainstream media industrial complex networks.
You said he's being arraigned to see if he's going to be transferred to the U.S., and that's happening in a couple of weeks. The last thing, I haven't really followed him too much, and I kind of feel guilty about it, because we know that Assange has been if not physically tortured, but definitely mentally abused. He's been in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day, and the people that do visit him, his dad was very worried, his mom was worried that he'd lost so much weight and that he might end up actually just dying from abuse. So is there any update to how he is mentally?
Mentally, we're not sure. The jail a few weeks ago said that they actually took him out of solitary confinement. Whether or not that's been verified, those are media reports. We had the UN go in there and say, what the extradition hearing, what about the war crimes that he exposed? And again, you had very, very minimal coverage here in the United States that occurred within the last week. Like I said, we're down to the last 2 weeks on whether or not this man is going to be extradited to the United States. And Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition party to the current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, just yesterday brought it up on the parliamentary floor and asked Johnson if he was going to allow this extradition and essentially kill free speech for journalists. And although Boris Johnson refused to comment on open cases or specific cases, he said that he would, of course, be like a champion for free speech and uphold journalistic integrity. That he didn't say he wasn't going to let Assange be extradited. And remember, Boris Johnson, the current prime minister, is pretty buddy with Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think?
Same kind of guy.
Let's say that they extradite him. He comes here, and then they're going to put him up on trial. Now, normally in trial, you get something called discovery, where everything that is known is made known because you have to have
in front of the court.
Yes, well, it works that both way for both sides. But this is a man who has never outed a source. But if push comes to shove, and he's either going to say out loud in his trial, yes, it was Seth Rich, or do you think he'd break his own code and maybe, for the lack of a better term, save his ass by telling people the truth in a public courtroom?
I hate to tell you, but you got some wishful thinking there, Ledge. If you think this guy's getting anything but a military tribunal that's rigged, he's not. There's not going to be a real trial for this guy. We're not going to see any of it. You're going to know less about this trial than you do about the current military tribunal with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed that took 19 years to try to get this guy for 9/11. That's the reality. We're talking about secret military courts. We're talking about a guy who, according to the last checkup on him, had less than 2 to 3 hours to go over any documentation against him over the last 3+ weeks. He is basically not only being mentally tortured, but it's being impossible for him to even try to defend himself in the kangaroo court they're trying to set up.
Wow. And you know what? It's kind of, I'm not going to say funny, but when Hirsch said, "Are you crazy?" He didn't want to get Clintonized. No. And this is the guy that released the Pentagon Papers.
Well, let's say
this is the guy who knows exactly what Assange is going through. He was Assange in the 70s. He was a newspaper guy, and he got the Pentagon Papers when we found out about all those lies. And he's still I mean most people that truly believe in free speech always use him as an example of what the Fourth Estate should be doing.
Right.
Yeah, well, the thing is that in that recorded phone call, Seymour Hersh actually says that he had met Assange back in the day, and then he got invited to the embassy. And he said, "I'm not effing going there. Are you crazy?" He goes, "That guy's under 24-hour surveillance. Everybody's spying on him." And, of course, he knew this way before the reports that came out that, he was being spied on by the CIA through a private Israeli intelligence firm run by Sheldon Adelson. And, there were cameras in the bathroom. So Seymour Hersh is just like, I stay the F away from people like that.